You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company. I'm your host, Tim Dooner. Thank you for joining us today. On today's episode, we are going to tie together a couple of our recent shows. On episode 29, we talked about the rise of warehouse robots with Greg Walls of Six River Systems. He covered some of the challenges that robotic arms face when picking. Our own Chris Peckham was on our last episode discussing parcel shipments and the pain points shippers face saving money when dealing with the duopoly of FedEx and UPS. He spoke of using data and best practices to drive value beyond the rate. Today, we have a guest with a solution that aims to solve both issues. Herbert Tenhav, the CEO of Fizyr, is dialing in from the Netherlands right now. Let's get him on the air and hear about what his parcel picking AI and machine learning robot software is all about. Hi, Herbert. Thank you for joining us on the air today.
Good morning.
You have the prestigious distinction of being my first international guest. Where are you dialing in from today?
I'm based in the Netherlands, near Amsterdam.
Beautiful country. You probably own a bike or two.
Actually, I think about 7 or 8.
Yeah, I've been there. I went there when I was 16 with my high school. I haven't been back. Would love to be back there. Maybe at some time to see your company, Fizyr, which we're going to talk about today. And you're coming on at a great time because our last few episodes were dealing with warehouse robotics and AI, as well as parcel picking. And you seem to have somewhat of a solution. But before we get to that, just so my audience knows who you are, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you even get involved in supply chain?
Okay. My background is in chemistry, but that's a long time ago. I'm already 54, so I'm an oldie. The route went via the company. So we were doing deep learning applications, and then we found out that the hot spot where clients were getting very enthusiastic was in logistics. So that's why we ended up in the logistics.
Wow. And I checked out your website. I looked at a lot of the information you had put out there. I watched a few of your videos, which were really well produced, I must say. And you are up to some pretty advanced applications now with Fizyr.
That's correct.
So now you're the CEO. Today you're the CEO of Fizyr, and that is a deep learning vision software for order picking and parcel handling. So what is Fizyr? What does all of that mean?
Fizyr in Dutch means scope, like the scope of a rifle. So we choose the name because we are always looking for where's the grasp pose of an item we're going to pick. So that's why Fizyr fits, and as well as we look in the future, look into new technologies, new applications. So that's why we like the name.
And what does Fizyr do? What's your main product that's come to market? What are you putting out there, and what problem are you solving today?
What we provide is deep learning-based algorithms that enable robots to cope with variation of the items and the parcels. So that could vary in shape, size, color, material, etc.
We know that there's not a lot of singularity in warehouses and not even a ton of uniformity. What are the challenges that you see warehouses facing back in 2018 since you've started the company and moving into 2019 where we are now?
There's a lot of SKUs in an average warehouse. Just take Amazon; they have millions of different SKUs. And like in a lot of other industries, they try to automate it, to apply robots. But due to the variation in the SKUs, it was impossible. You can teach one object, but the next time you have to teach it again, and it's a little bit different. Just take bags. If you drop a bag 1,000 times, the camera, the robot, the algorithm will see 1,000 different bags, but it's the same bag. So what we bring to the table is we create an algorithm that enables the robot to cope with variation and still sees it as a bag and knows how to grasp it.
You've got your hands in a few different pots. You guys are dealing with AI, machine learning, and I even saw some robots on the site too that were doing something really interesting. When I last talked to a robotic warehouse, they had the kind of warehouses that go up and down the lanes, you know? They do the picking style where a human being has to put things on the cart.
Mm-hmm.
Your robots on your site, they look like they have their own arms, and they're able to make something that the last person I talked to said was really hard, which is a distinction between SKUs and a distinction between especially things like pouches and clothes, the robotic arms have a hard time telling these things apart. So what are you doing to meet that challenge?
Yeah. Let's first start with a lot of robots that are used for goods to men. So they bring the goods to the human, where the human still does the picking, like in e-fulfillment is done daily and everywhere. So what we bring to the table is we can replace parts of the human pickers with robots. So those robots are static, and they are mostly an arm with 6 dimensions, so it can freely move. And there is an end effector, a gripper on the robot. So we enable those robots to pick items it has never seen before. So we teach it to generalize and pick items from a tote or from a pallet, mostly boxes, bags, cylinders, tubes, flasks, etc.
Are there dimensional limitations to what these robots can do? I imagine you can only make them so big. So at the scale that you're using them right now, what's sort of the best application for one of these dynamic picking robots?
Yeah, the hot spot is actually 2 areas. One is in warehousing, where you have goods to man systems like Van der Lande, Dematic, AutoStore, those companies. It's mostly picking from a bin, like 60 by 40 centimeters. Excuse me, I don't know in inches. So it's picking products for e-fulfillment in a bin. And the other area we are really active in is in parcel handling, like for DHL, UPS, Federal Express. They have to singulate parcels, mostly from a conveyor belt. So we have created algorithms that also is able to find each of those parcels and enable a robot to pick them.
You know, this is a brave new world. There's a lot of new terms that people are unfamiliar with that are coming into the forefront. One of them is RPA, which is robotic process automation. What is that? Just for anyone who's listening who's not even aware of what's going on in the warehouse space with RPA.
Yeah, actually, that's not our field of expertise, to be honest, Timothy. We use supervised learning. So we translate an image from a camera, mostly a 3D camera, stereo vision, into a 6 degrees of freedom grasp location of the different objects. So robot process automation is often used in banking and insurance to automate human processes, administrative processes.
And you mentioned vision here. So what role does that play into these arms? I imagine they can see what they're picking, and it's using some sort of 360-degree dynamic. What's going on under the hood there? What's happening? What's occurring?
Okay. Imagine a human picking an item from a tote. It has the eyes, so we can see stereo, so we can see depth, and we can see different objects, and we try to grasp it with our hands. So what we do as Fizyr, take the image from the camera, so there's a stereo camera above, and we do segmentation of that image. So we segment, like this is the tote, this is one object, and this is the next one. This is crucial because if we mix it up, so let's 2 boxes are aligned to each other, and you try to grasp it in the middle. So let's say you see it as 1 and you try to grasp it in the middle. Then you either have 1 or 0 or 2 items in the gripper, the robot. So you have a failure. So segmenting is the first step we do with the image. Secondly, we do classification. This is the tote, this is a box, this is a bag, etc. So we can also treat it differently if we know what it is. And thirdly, we find the grasp locations in 6 degrees of freedom. So actually, we are the brain that translates the image from the camera into guiding the arm to pick it.
Wow. And you know, these things that you're doing, these technologies that you're breaking through, they're not without their accolades. Last year, you were Company of the Month for Transmetrics, and here's a big one. You won the Amazon Picking Challenge, and I believe you won, 2 challenges there in 2016? What is the Amazon Picking Challenge for those unfamiliar? What was the process in getting involved with that, and how did you win?
It was before my time, so I only know the stories. There was a team combined with the university that participated, so Team Delft. It was in 2016, so the company was still called Delft Robotics, and we were doing integration, so robotic integrations. And so they applied deep learning to understand where the different SKUs, the different products, to pick them from the shelf and to put them in a tote, and also to put them back in the shelf. The challenge, they stopped doing this. So last year they did it, was last year. So Amazon has a different route gaining this knowledge now.
So you mentioned you came in after 2016, so they'd already won this. So since you've been involved with the company, how has the company evolved and changed? What have you brought to the fold?
Um, uh, the main thing I did is understanding the challenges in the market and trying to get a product market fit and aligning the team towards that. So when I joined, actually 2 years ago, January 2017, within 2 months we did a pivot. We stopped doing hardware and robotics integrations, and we only provided algorithms. So we are a computer vision or a machine vision company. And at the beginning, we also worked for food and agriculture, horticulture, flowers. But we soon found out that logistics was the hotspot, and we're quite good at it. And now big companies, global companies, tell us you're the best, and so they want to work with us and claim our time. So now we have to get a lot of new people in because that's a challenge, growing fast.
Well, in terms of technology, warehousing is where it's at. I mean, some of the most exciting breakthroughs are occurring there. But a big thing comes up when you want to deal with technology, right? And that is data. So what role does data play in warehouse automation and AI and even, in terms of integrating your own software?
In our case, it's very specific. We use supervised learning to train our algorithms. What it means is like, let's assume you have a child, 2-year-old, and you try to teach what is a cow or a horse or an apple and a pear. So you show the kid various examples. At some point, the kid can generalize to say, this is also an apple, this is also a pear or a horse or a cow. So actually what we do is similar. We feed the algorithm with a lot of images, and we tell them this is a box, this is a bag, etc. And then we train on it. And at some point, the algorithm can also make these distinctions and find the grasp locations of those objects. So we use supervised learning with a lot of data. So we're also data hungry in this respect.
And in terms of connecting that data activity back into something like a warehouse management system or an ERP, what is the feedback that your system can get, and what role can it play in connecting with the rest of the supply chain?
Actually, there's no connection, to be honest. It's like we train a silicon brain. So we train it with examples, and then at some point we can just leave it alone, and it can also become better. But we can also update all those silicon brains out there in the world and connect them with each other and let them learn from each other. So it becomes better and better. We use a GPU, graphical processing unit, in a computer to run the algorithm. So it runs locally, and there's no connection with an ERP systems or whatsoever. So it's just used to guide the robot that runs locally.
And you mentioned that they can learn from each other. So this is a real true form of AI, you're saying, right? It doesn't take a bunch of programming. It's really learning from its actions and from the input that you're giving it. It's a student of the action that's occurring, right? It's a student of its own input.
Yes and no. We want to control it. We don't want it to completely learn by itself, because it can also learn stupid things. And then it's very hard to relearn it. So so we want to have full control. So we have full control over what the algorithm learns and how it's being taught, and we can also change it. So we are able with our methodology to create an algorithm very specific for a certain client. If they only do bags, we can make it perfectly for bags. And if it does also boxes and other stuff, then we have this algorithm. So again, we have full control over what it learns and how it will perform.
What are the deliverables on this? What kind of results, or do you have a case study or an example of a company who's brought in your learning software and your robotics, the silicon brain that's going on there? What have they gotten back in return?
Yeah, mostly we aim for the big ones. So we work with really the market leaders in the world in this material handling equipment market. And first of all, they all say it's not invented here, so they think like, you're a small team in the Netherlands, so what do you have to bring to the table? And then we challenge them. We say, okay, well, tell us what is your biggest challenge? How can we convince you? And then we start. Often, let's say 1 year ago, we started with pilots, and we demonstrated we are much better than anybody else, and we can also become even faster and more accurate, etc. When we train with more data. So at some point they get very, very enthusiastic, and then, like I said, they claim us and they want to have more people of us doing work for them.
Wow. Amazing stuff. So where are you seeing? So you're a growing company. You mentioned you're out there in the Netherlands. You're a small company, but I was reading a blog of yours from last year. You doubled your team in 2018. What does the outlook for 2019 look like for you guys?
No, to be honest, we're still bootstrapped, so we never raised money. So which is not like in America. I think there you quickly raise seed money or a Series A. So we are now in the process to do our seed round of 1.5 million euros to really speed up the process. But actually, we run on revenue, so we get paid by clients quite nicely, and so we can grow based on that. But we want to grow much faster.
You know, that's interesting. I mean, you bring up a great point. In the US, yes, most startups are funded by seed money or seed funding. So now, because you're not, though, you own the whole company, right? So, and you're bringing in revenue, you're actually in an attractive position to investors potentially, right? Now that you are going into the market to ask for that funding.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. But there's also a limitation because several clients of us, they wanted to invest. And that makes us linked to those clients, which we don't want. We want to be independent. We want to be able to serve many robotic integrators, robotic firms, and material handling equipment providers with our software. So if we would accept their money, then the rest of the market would see us as an extension of them. So which is not attractive. So we want to go for venture capital money only, and not accepting money from one of our clients.
Sure, great move there. And when you look at a client, the clients that you have now, you go for the bigger ones. But what makes someone? Is there a barrier to entry to bringing this software on board and to integrate this into your warehouse? What does a warehouse need to know before they even approach you?
Actually, with two exceptions, we don't deliver to. We didn't deliver yet to end users because it's really a market that's just coming out of research and getting into reality. So we tend to work with the big integrators because they have the money, the knowledge, and the interest to invest in this. Because if we want to go to an end user, then they ask us to integrate the robot, and that's exactly what we don't want. We only want to be the key to solve this machine vision part and enable the robot integrator to do all the rest, because they are much better equipped to install, maintain, etc., support their installations. So our route to market is really via the big robotic integrators, the material handling equipment providers.
Is your focus on parcel? I know e-com has exploded and it's obviously just going to keep growing, but it creates a challenge. In the United States, there's, the duopoly of you basically just have the choice between FedEx or UPS. I'm not sure if in your area it's the same way, but it makes savings opportunities quite difficult for shippers. The cost opportunity savings tend to come in things like optimization, better routing, understanding service levels, and those kind of things. Does this help bridge those challenges that e-commerce shippers are facing?
Like I said, I would say that 50% of our focus now is into e-fulfillment. So picking robots for goods-to-man systems and picking any item that goes to a client. And the other 50% is in parcel handling. And in parcel handling, it's mostly the small parcels, let's say up till 3 or 5 kilos, picking them from bulk, sometimes picking them from a conveyor belt, moving conveyor belt, and singulating them, so picking them one by one. And then we work, our integrators, they work for different of those suppliers you mentioned just now. And it's up to our integrators to deal with those big parcel handlers. And just to give you an idea, Timothy, currently there are 240 million packages handled every day. That's about 2,400 every hour. Every second. So, and a person that picks those often doesn't get more than 500-600, maybe max 800 parcels they pick per hour. So you just imagine how many people are doing this continuously worldwide.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point. So your robots here, and when they're using your software, how many packages can they handle an hour or a second or whatever metric we want to use?
It's a good question, but actually, I'm not the person to answer that because we're not integrating the robots. We're just supplying with the vision software, which is a key element. Otherwise, they cannot automate it. So it's limited towards the distance they have to travel with the package, the parcel, as well as with the weight of the parcel. So the inertia of how fast can you move, as well as how sure are you that it's well connected towards the end effector, the gripper of the robot. So there are robots that move very, very fast, but if you want to shift, let's say, bottles of wine or boxes with bottles of wine, you probably want to be more careful and slower.
So the limitations are based in the physical robot, not in the software.
Exactly.
Is there any processes limitation? Like it can only handle so many processes per second, or have you already gotten way past that challenge and you're already ahead of whatever demands these robots would even have at this stage?
Yeah. So our algorithm works with finding grass poses. So we normally when we take an image like a photo, we normally use between 100 and 300 or 400 milliseconds to find all grass poses in the image. And we recently done something with picking a lot of small parcels from a conveyor belt. And our algorithm could find more than 100 grass poses each second. So there is no robot at all able to do this kind of movement. So the limitation is not in our software. So the limitation is in what you just said, the physical world of the robot and the gripper and the products handling.
I love it too. I'm a kid from the 80s. I grew up thinking that, robots would be serving me fast food. So it's cool to see it happen, man. Everybody in the 80s was a robot or a robot friend, and then the US government would try and steal it from you, and you'd have to go and hide in the woods. But that's a conversation for a different day. So, but you're looking at this. You're seeing this space grow. It's 2019. A lot of warehouses still need to get updated. But when they do, what do you see the, ideal warehouse looking like? The ideal integration point for you guys by, let's say, 2025?
Let's be honest. There is everybody looks at greenfield, but there's a lot of brownfield, a lot of legacy out there. So and our solution really works for a static robot. So there is goods to man system. So the static robot can continuously pick. So then you have a business case. So replacing a picker, a human picker. So taking in account, you have a lot of goods to man systems, like we just mentioned, like Van der Lande, Dometic, and AutoStore, and many others. At some point, you have full control over the items to be picked. So in that case, you can automate it. So you can know this robot cell can pick these and these items. So at some point, you will have stores that you can turn out the light, and that can be automated. But in reality, I see a lot of exceptions that a robot cannot handle because it's too big or too heavy or hard to grasp. So there will always be some humans doing some work. But in a few years' time, it will go very fast, sure.
Yeah, I mean, China just announced they're opening 150 high-tech logistics hubs. And, if that's to be believed, they're saying that there's going to be autonomous vehicles, drones, automated warehouses, all of this technology coming together. It's obviously sooner or later moving there. And as you mentioned, there is a lot of brownfield. There's a lot, especially in supply chain. There's a lot of companies that, they're on those legacy systems, and it took them forever to even get on ERP, and it's going to take just as long perhaps, but hopefully not as long to get in the robotics front. But what would your warning be to somebody who's not even thinking about this? If they run a warehouse now, or they're an e-com fulfiller or an e-com business, should they be thinking about this? Is this a solution for everybody?
I would say if you have control over your environment, if you know what kind of products you want to pick, so you don't know, you know exactly what you're picking, but let's say there are boxes or bags and stuff and they fit into a tote. If you then use a goods to man system, then it becomes very attractive to apply robotics. And so I would see, my suggestion would be to really look at what are the latest developments. And we have the software, so you just need an integrator that will integrate our software in their situation. So actually, it's not so far away.
Yeah, so that's great segue. Predictions just for the rest of the year. It's 2019. I know there's a lot of concerns over, our President Trump and the trade war things going on with China, Canada, the new NAFTA agreement that's gone on. Over in Europe, you have Brexit occurring. And at the same time, you have companies with a lot of revenue moving forward and a lot of this technology emerging in the supply chain. So for you guys, for this year, what is your sort of forecast? Do you see just way more proliferation of technology? How do you see it going?
We had the point last year where we had to prove a lot of technology. So did a lot of pilots and showing we can do this. So that's every customer we speak with now, they understand we can do this. So that's not the issue. It's more integrating it. And so I would say if you really look in all the videos that are out there, even in China with all the big like JD.com, etc., and Alibaba, all the picking is still done by humans. So even the AGVs, the sorting centers, where there's a flip flop on top of it and it flips, and so to sort the parcel, it's being done manually by humans. So in this space, I would see a lot of change because we have the software now. We are able to for a big part, never 100%. It will always be something weird that we cannot pick, but for a very high percentage, close to 100%, we're able to find the grasp location of those items. So I would see a big move, but yeah, before it's installed, you're already 1.5 years further. So it takes a while before those systems are up and running.
You mentioned the human element, and anyone who's ran a warehouse knows that one of the hardest parts of running a warehouse is just the operations in terms of staff. It's a lot of seasonal and short-term workers, people who just get fed up with the job and, leave during the middle of a shift or just don't return the next day. In terms of your processes and these robots, because whenever you hear robots, people get scared. Whenever you hear automation, they think that people's jobs are going to be taken away. Does automation in these robots take people's jobs away, or are they enhancing them and helping to fill this employment void?
Good question. Sure, they take jobs away, but there is also a limitation of people doing the work. There is a shortage of people, at least in Europe, in parts of Europe, where we have a very hard time getting people to work in a warehouse. And with the increase of fulfillment of the online business, they have a problem. So robots is just needed for the next couple of years just to cope with the growth and the less people that want to work day and night, because a lot of work is done also at night in sorting centers in those facilities. So I think it's really a need to automate these processes.
Yeah, I would agree with you, especially having worked in a warehouse before, not for a long time, but it's very repetitive work, and it can be very mind-numbing, and I just can see why people leave that field rather quickly. Yeah. So how can my listeners, if they want to learn more about Fizyr and learn more about you, how can they go about contacting you?
Yeah, of course, they can visit our website. They can actually the latest news, we mostly put it on LinkedIn, on our LinkedIn page. So we like the communication, so people responding, replying, and we can give them answers. So we try to use LinkedIn a lot, and of course the videos are on YouTube as well. And we're often at exhibitions. So I will be in Chicago. We'll have a demo there with one of our clients. So if people want to meet me, we can meet in Chicago in April.
That would be on LinkedIn, right? It's Fizyr. So would they just search for that on LinkedIn and find the company page?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
And is the website the same? Is it fizyr.com?
Correct.
Perfect stuff. I'm just excited seeing these developments in robotics.
Yeah, it's going really fast. And actually, to be honest, I would love to show more, but we can't because we made this stuff for the material handling equipment providers, so our clients. So it's up to them to disclose that information. So I would expect in the next half year a lot of things coming out of their from that area. But it's up to our clients to disclose that information. We can only show them what we've done publicly.
Well, that was an Amsterdam good time, Herbert.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, and have a wonderful night. Looking to modernize, digitize, and future-proof your supply chain? Visit day1.io for a free Day 1 Data Optimization Report. That's day, 0, 1.io. Isn't it time you got optimized? Announcing On October 10th, 2019, Aborn & Co. presents TransTech 2020, a supply chain vision and innovation conference. This event is the first of its kind in Boston. Join our panel of speakers from the worlds of logistics and technology as we discuss the modern needs of the supply chain and the merger between the physical and digital footprint that freight creates. Head on over to transtech2020.com for more details. We'll be talking about AI, automation, autonomous vehicles, blockchain, data purity and capture, future-proofing the supply chain, market conditions, transportation management systems, and so much more. Head on over to transtech2020.com for registrant and sponsored details. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to email me at tdooner@abornandco.com. That's TDOONER@abornandco.com. I'd be happy to learn something new with you. For this episode and all of our previous shows, visit consultinglogistics.io or simply search for Consulting Logistics on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player of choice. And hey, if you like the show, the best way you can give back is to share it. And if you really liked it, go on iTunes over there and rate and review. Be much appreciated. That's it. We're out of time. For Herbert 10 Half, I'm Tim Dooner saying take care and happy shipping. 10 Half. By the way, if you're wondering, 10 Half, I believe he told me that was the river. I'll have to double check with him.
Yeah, the last name is, it means at the harbor.
At the harbor.
At the harbor.
And perfect.
Yeah.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm a child of the 80s, so any talk of robots massages the cockles of my heart.